The city of Portland never slept the way people imagined. It breathed. It watched. And on one cold evening, as rain slid down glass buildings and traffic lights blinked like tired eyes, Emma Carter stood frozen on her apartment balcony, realizing her life had quietly crossed a line she never planned to step over. Everyone warned her about this kind of thing. They said it was wrong. They said it was unnatural. They said it would only bring pain. Emma used to believe them. She was 36, practical, careful, and proud of the way she had built her life. She believed in balance and doing things the right way at the right time. She worked as an urban planner, a job rooted in order and structure. She liked plans. She liked knowing where roads led. What she didn't like was uncertainty. Yet uncertainty had found her anyway. It began on an ordinary Monday morning when the office doors opened and Daniel Wright walked in, shaking rain from his coat. He didn't announce himself. He didn't try to impress anyone. He simply smiled, polite and calm, and introduced himself in a voice that made people pause and listen. Emma barely noticed him at first. He was assigned to her project team, nothing more. Another professional, another name on the schedule. But during their first meeting, she noticed how he listened closely. How he didn't rush to speak. How his ideas were thoughtful instead of loud. That should have been the end of it. Instead, the days added up. They stayed late one night to finish a proposal. Someone suggested coffee. Daniel brought Emma the kind she liked without asking. She wondered how he knew. He shrugged and said, "You always avoid the cream. Small things. Harmless things." Then came conversations that stretched beyond work. They talked about cities, about how people moved through spaces, about loneliness in crowded places. Daniel spoke about starting over later in life, about learning that timing wasn't always fair. Emma listened more than she spoke. Something in his words unsettled her, not because they were wrong, but because they felt true. She told herself it was nothing. Just respect. Just connection. But connection has weight. Emma felt it during quiet moments. It's like when Daniel waited for her at the elevator or walked beside her in silence instead of filling the air with noise. She felt it when she caught herself wondering what he was thinking. That scared her. At night, she replayed conversations in her head. She searched for reasons to dismiss her feelings. She reminded herself of expectations, her own and everyone else's. She had built a life that made sense. This didn't fear crept in quietly. Not fear of Daniel, but fear of what his presence was waking up inside her. One evening, after a long meeting, they walked out together. The rain had slowed to a mist. Streetlights reflected on wet pavement. "Do you ever notice," Daniel said, "how people fear things just because they don't fit what they're used to?" Emma's steps slowed. She looked at him, surprised by the timing of the question. "Yes," she said carefully. "I think fear is easier than understanding." Daniel smiled, not triumphant, but thoughtful. That moment stayed with her. Over the following weeks, the air between them shifted. Nothing improper happened. No lines were crossed. But something unspoken grew stronger. Emma became more aware of herself, of how she fixed her hair before meetings. How she noticed Daniel's moods. How silence with him felt different than silence with anyone else. She didn't want this. Or maybe she did, and that terrified her more. Her friends talked freely about relationships, about what was acceptable and what wasn't. Emma laughed along, feeling like she was holding a secret too fragile to expose. Late at night, she searched online, hoping for reassurance, hoping to be told her feelings were temporary or foolish. Instead, she found opinions, judgments, warnings, but none of them explained why her heart felt so awake. The turning point came when the firm sent them to a conference in Vancouver. A simple work trip. 2 days, nothing more. The city felt unfamiliar and distant, as if reality had loosened its grip. After the final session, Emma and Daniel walked along the harbor. The water was dark, broken by reflections of distant lights. They stopped near the railing. "I don't want to pretend anymore," Daniel said quietly. "I've tried. But I respect you too much to lie." Emma's chest tightened. "I'm scared," she admitted, "of what this means." Daniel nodded. "So am I. But fear doesn't mean something is wrong. The words landed heavy and clear. Emma looked at the water, then back at him. She realized the fear she had been carrying wasn't about nature or rules. It was about courage. She didn't respond with promises. She didn't step closer. But she didn't walk away either. That night, alone in her hotel room, Emma sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor. Her heart felt loud in the quiet. She thought about the life she had built, the lines she had followed, the comfort of predictability. And she thought about how alive she felt when Daniel spoke her name. She knew this moment mattered. She also knew that once she acknowledged the truth, there would be consequences, questions, judgments, uncertainty. Outside, the city lights flickered, indifferent to her struggle. Emma took a slow breath. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to admit the truth she had been avoiding, and that truth would change everything. The first morning after their quiet confession, Emma felt the city differently. Portland's streets seemed sharper, brighter, somehow alive in a way they hadn't been before. She walked to work with a strange weight lifted, yet at the same time her heart pounded with the unknown. Choosing love, even cautiously, was nothing like following a planet, was stepping into a storm without knowing how long it would last or what it might bring. Daniel had been there. Of course, steady and patient. The kind of man who understood that real feelings weren't about rushing, they were about moments. Their relationship didn't explode overnight. It grew in whispers, in glances that lingered, in small gestures that held more meaning than any dramatic declaration. He walked beside her to the office, offered coffee just the way she liked it. Remembered tiny details that she hadn't realized she had shared. Nothing too much, nothing scandalous, just enough to keep the spark alive. Emma worried about judgment, about the ripple effect of living honestly. People's opinions were like shadows, sometimes distant, sometimes looming. Her best friend, Rachel, noticed the change first. They met for dinner at a small sunlit cafe downtown, the smell of fresh bread filling the air. Rachel studied her for a long moment. "You seem lighter," she said, voice soft, but heavier at the same time. Emma smiled nervously, admitting just enough, leaving the rest unsaid. Rachel didn't judge. She simply said, "People fear what they don't understand. That doesn't make you wrong." Those words stayed with Emma like a promise. She repeated them to herself over the next few days as she navigated work and life with Daniel. Every interaction between them was careful yet charged, deliberate yet tender. They didn't cross boundaries that might attract unnecessary attention. Their love lived in silence, in shared laughter, in the comfort of someone who saw you fully without trying to fix or mold you. At night, Emma would sometimes stare out her apartment window, watching rain streak down the glass as city lights blurred. Daniel would be beside her, quiet, reading or sipping tea, and she realized how much courage it took to let yourself feel fully. Knowing there was no guarantee that life would reward honesty. Courage, she understood, was different from recklessness. It didn't demand bold gestures or declarations. It demanded patience, truth, and the willingness to carry your heart in its own hands. There were tests, subtle ones. Emma felt the weight of what others thought pressing in, at times colleagues who made offhand comments, friends who questioned timing, family who didn't fully understand. She worried Daniel might feel the pressure too. And she watched him wrestle privately with doubts, afraid that this slow, cautious love might be judged harshly. But each time they returned to one another, strengthened by honesty and respect. Daniel would remind her gently, "If this ever becomes too much, you need to choose yourself first." Emma realized that this was the paradox of love. It wasn't always about passion or fireworks. Sometimes it was about being present, about choosing someone every day while letting them choose you. The fear never fully disappeared, but it became a companion rather than a barrier. It was the fear of change, the fear of defying expectations, the fear of vulnerability. And yet, the moments of connection, the quiet dinners, the soft smiles, the shared silences proved that living honestly was worth every risk. As spring approached, Emma and Daniel found themselves in a rhythm. Their interactions at work were professional but layered with unspoken understanding. Conversations outside the office became longer, more personal. They shared hopes, disappointments, and the small, ordinary details of life that often get overlooked. It was these details, Emma realized, that revealed the depth of their bond. The world could judge, but inside their quiet moments, there was freedom. Emma felt herself changing. The careful, orderly life she had built was no longer enough. She wanted a life that included love, even if it didn't follow the rules others had set. She walked with a new confidence, smiled more freely, laughed more openly. Daniel noticed too, and their connection deepened. They didn't need declarations of love. Their actions, their patience, their attention to one another spoke louder than any words could. One evening, they walked along a familiar park path. Lights from the street lamps casting soft shadows. The air smelled of rain and fresh grass. Daniel stopped and looked at her. "You're different," he said, "but the best kind of different. You're alive." Emma laughed softly, brushing her hair behind her ear. She realized then that choosing to love, even in small, careful steps, had brought her back to life in ways she hadn't imagined possible. The world outside was still unpredictable, still full of voices and opinions that questioned their choice. But inside, Emma felt a clarity she had never known. She understood now that fear was natural and being judged was natural, but letting them control her heart was not. She could not let the world dictate the rhythm of her life or her capacity to feel by mid-spring. Emma and Daniel's relationship was quietly blossoming. They shared weekends exploring quiet neighborhoods, visiting art galleries, and walking along the river. They learned each other's quirks, cherished small routines, and built a safe space within a world that often demanded conformity. Every touch of the hand, every smile across the room was an affirmation. Love did not need permission. Emma's friends slowly came to see the truth. Rachel was the first to openly accept their relationship, admiring Emma's courage. Some colleagues remained skeptical, others curious, but Emma no longer allowed their judgments to dictate her feelings. The fear she once carried was now tempered by understanding her own understanding that living authentically, even when challenging, was worth it. One afternoon, standing on her apartment balcony once more, Emma watched the city stretch beneath her. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Daniel joined her quietly, bringing tea. They stood together in comfortable silence, no words necessary. Emma thought of everything they had been through, the fear, the hesitation, the small victories, and felt an overwhelming sense of peace. This was love that defied expectations but didn't harm anyone. It didn't need to be loud or visible to be real. It was patient, deliberate, and built on mutual respect. Emma realized that what people often feared most wasn't love itself, but the courage it demanded. Love required stepping forward when the path wasn't clear, admitting vulnerability, and trusting another human being with your heart in that quiet moment. Emma understood the lesson fully. Life didn't punish honesty. Nature didn't rebel against true connection. People feared what they didn't understand. But understanding could grow when hearts were brave enough to open. Emma turned to Daniel and smiled. His eyes reflected the city lights, calm and warm. There was no grand declaration, no dramatic gesture. Just presence, trust, and a quiet promise to continue building their life together in truth and honesty. The fear was still there in the corners, but it no longer held power. They had chosen courage. And that choice had reshaped everything. The city continued to hum below them, oblivious to the intimate moment shared high above. Emma felt a thrill in that simplicity, a quiet joy that resonated deeper than any applause or approval. They had found something rare, a love that was real, mature and enduring, not because it fit expectations, but because it fit them. And in that realization, Emma knew something powerful. Everyone might fear it. Everyone might think it goes against nature. But love, true love, never does. It simply waits for someone brave enough to accept it.